Hello, and welcome to the Full of Ship podcast. Real answers to real problems. With your host, Kyle Henderson, CEO and co-founder of Vision API, a podcast dedicated to demystify the chaotic, often turbulent world of ocean freight. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Welcome back to another episode of Full of Ship, the podcast from Vision. Today we have Charley Dehoney. Charley, it's such a pleasure to have you today joining us for this conversation. We've known each other for a little while now. I know you from your time, with Freight Mango. I hear you have a new gig that you just started. So maybe you could tell me a bit about, your stint at Freight Mango, maybe a little bit before that, and what's this really new exciting thing? I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Is it ZEBOX?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, happy to be here. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure when we were chatting, before we started recording, it just always feels like, two logistics nerds talking, which is always, refreshing. So congrats on all the success. Happy to, be on the show today. But, for those of you who don't know me, Charley Dehoney, I'm, coming up on 19 years now in logistics and supply chain. Really focused my career on the intersections of transportation and technology, and have spent time in many logistics technology startups as an early stage co-founder, employee, janitor, marriage counselor, angel investor, all of the above. And Kyle and I got to know each other probably socially, and then spent a lot of time talking about the Vision project that he's been working on the last few years. And then I was able to become a customer and a consumer of Vision while running Freight Mango, which is a digital freight marketplace, really automating and digitizing global trade and coupling all of the services required to import goods into the U.S. and conduct business. So recently left Freight Mango. The project was going very, very well, but I was contacted by the folks at CMA CGM Group, which is one of the largest shipping companies in the world, based in Marseille, France. It's a 45-ish-year-old steam shipping company that's really scaled their business into contract logistics through their acquisition of Siva Logistics in 2017, and then just last week acquired Ingram Micro's contract logistics group here in the U.S. So Siva is the third or fourth largest contract logistics provider in the world, and CMA CGM Group's among the most profitable, privately held companies in the world. And the chairman of the company, Rodolphe Saadé, who's the son of the founder, and the founder, Jacques Saadé, is a very interesting person. He really brought containers into, the shipping industry. He noticed as a young man that the military would generally put their cargo into containers before they put it in vessels for transportation. And Jacques thought that if you could make that container the size of the back of a truck or a trailer, that it could really revolutionize global trade. And he was right. And so CMA CGM Group was really born out of innovation and has grown and scaled globally, as an innovative company. And Rodolphe, when he took over for his father, was terrified that innovation inside of this large global conglomerate would stop. And so Rodolphe took a look at, the best practices around corporate innovation. And it was very clear that innovation was generally best delivered when it was externalized and it was outside of the four walls of the operation, especially in something like supply chain and logistics and a business like that, where everything's so execution focused and operationally based. And then secondly, he realized that collaborative innovation with stakeholders and trade partners was critical to the success and the deployment of new technologies. So he founded ZEBOX in Marseille, France, about 3 years ago as a really kind of like a typical technology accelerator or incubator, which is a real common thing over in Europe, where startups or entrepreneurs will actually take offices inside of these incubators to develop their projects and really learn how to become an entrepreneur. And so since ZEBOX was founded 3 years ago, it's since supported a couple of hundred startups that have gone on to raise, in the 40 billion euro kind of a type of a category. And And Rodolphe always realized that the U.S. was the hotbed of innovation and technology startups in the world, and always envisioned having, a major hub inside of the United States to address the logistics technology ecosystem. So I'm super excited to be launching ZEBOX. So we've got about 10 corporate partners that have signed on to come and support the mission that Rodolphe Saadé put forward for ZEBOX. So these are companies that are not publicly announced yet, but will be in the coming days. So these are titans of the supply chain, a class 1 major railroad, one of the largest ports on the East Coast, major providers of trucking and drayage services in the U.S., probably the foremost success story in supply chain and logistics technology is supporting us as a corporate partner. So really excited to be working with these companies to do a couple of things for these corporate partners. One is we work with these large corporate groups within their innovation departments to address their current kind of strategy around innovation, and then coach and teach them on best practices for corporate innovation. And then we also work with them to define problem statements that are visible in their business. That these are issues that can be addressed with technology. And then once those problem statements are accurately defined and agreed upon with all these sort of corporate executive teams, we'll then go out and address the startup market to find companies that categorically can address those challenges that exist in the corporate partner's business. And then really depending on the timeline in their corporate life cycle that startup is at, we can get them into the right program inside of ZEBOX to help them develop their project, refine their messaging, maybe build their team, have their technology security assessed, all of the different parts of the process that, as you well know, come up when you're selling into enterprise. And so it's really been a fun journey. I'm about 4.5 months in, spent a lot of time on the road, but just meeting great people and loving the opportunity to support founders all the time.
And you mentioned that bringing ZEBOX to the United States is a newer thing. For how long is the ZEBOX office? And is the office in Arlington, Virginia? Where's it located?
So ZEBOX coming to America was announced in April of 2021. And I joined the project in August. And I was the first hire as the head of the team over here. So I recently hired a chief operating officer. I started a couple of weeks ago. It hasn't been publicly announced yet, so I won't share the name just yet. But these announcements will be coming out in the coming days. This person has a deep background in working with large corporate strategic partners inside of supply chain and logistics to accelerate the deployment of technology. So really perfectly fit for this role. And then, and this individual is going to be moving to Arlington, Virginia, which is where ZEBOX's United States office is going to be located. So this specific location was handpicked for a couple of key reasons. First and foremost, Amazon has decided to put their HQ2 just across the Potomac from DC in a place called Crystal City in Arlington, Virginia. So we're happy to be among their first neighbors in joining them in their initiative of building what they're calling Logistics Technology Valley right there. So LogTech Valley is really what's known as like this stretch of Crystal Drive. It's about 1.5 miles of continuous real estate that is owned in majority by one landlord. So that's super unique. And it positioned this particular area to address Amazon's unique needs for technology. So in addition to having underground data centers, this whole entire area is wired under the ground with 5G internet connectivity. Then they were able to, since all of the buildings are owned by JBG Smith, the landlord, they were able to go up through the buildings and add indoor and outdoor 5G connectivity, enabling new categories of wireless internet service that were previously unavailable. So this 1.5 mile stretch is anchored by Amazon's HQ2 to the north. To the south, Virginia Tech is building $1 billion plus innovation center for postgraduate studies with a focus on supply chain and logistics. So we're going to be uniquely situated right in the middle with 14,000 square feet of the best looking co-working and office space that you're ever going to see, specifically dedicated to housing logistics technology and supply chain technology startups. And we have beautiful views overlooking the Reagan National Airport, the Potomac River. You can see all the monuments in the National Stadium right there. And it's all just built to suit for collaboration. So I mentioned before we started recording, we'll also have a best-in-class streaming facility where I fully expect you to show up and air a few of your episodes, please. And thank you.
Happy to join. And it'll be a homecoming for me because I actually built 2 different analytics and mapping startups in Arlington more than 15 years ago or so.
That's right. I forgot about this.
I'm actually going to look forward to seeing how the space has changed. And it sounds like it's been quite the upgrade.
Oh man, you'll be pleasantly surprised. We have, world-class dining and entertainment right here in this little area that used to be, even prior to like me ever visiting there, it was just rich with, government contractors and some of the most drab and boring buildings you're ever going to see. But as Amazon often does, they showed up in the neighborhood with a bang. They're sprucing the place up. Our next door neighbor, our address is going to be 1550 Crystal Drive. Our next door neighbor just to the south is one of Amazon's 7 buildings. So on the way to work in the morning, if you've been to Crystal City, you know that they have all these underground tunnels and you can kind of walk around. So I like to stay at the Gateway Marriott right behind my office there. I walk under the tunnel, I pop out, I grab a banana for breakfast from Amazon's famous banana stands, and then I walk into the building. So the facility will be opening in late January, early February. We'll be accepting our first startup residents to come join the journey with us, and then we'll be inaugurating the facility sometime in February or March, which of course you will also be on the invite list, and I hope you can make it.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate that. And so you mentioned ZEBOX started about 3 years ago. This seems to be a bit of a trend. I mean, 3, 4, 5 years ago, how many, say, large multinational companies in the supply chain logistics were really kind of going this route? I mean, is this a combination like VC interest? Like what has changed in the last few years? Why is there so much money showing up all of a sudden?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So, first and foremost, I think the number one thing we all can attribute or pay thanks to is e-commerce, and the growth of e-commerce really in the last 20 years has driven the entire industry forward. And we should all be grateful for that. But I think what you're seeing now is as large international, and globally focused logistics companies, as certain ones hit a level of scale, you're now seeing that the asset-based folks are getting into the logistics business. The logistics providers are now buying assets. And so, my vision has always been that eventually all logistics companies will identify as that. Some will have assets, others will not. But the ones with assets will ultimately be that like kind of foundational, infrastructural level that every industry needs. And so you are right. I mean, about 4 or 5 years ago, I can tell you being out on the venture trail, from 2012 through, call it 2017, there was a real warming of the market, and the size of your deck was able to shrink. When we first went to market at Cargomatic, the deck was about 50 pages. And the first 47 were why FedEx would never get into local short haul, less than truckload logistics. And really everything in the investor's mind started and stopped with FedEx and UPS. And you think just in the last 5 years, you've seen the explosive growth of XPO and Maersk launching their own venture capital fund, and companies like CMA CGM acquiring CEVA, and then Ingram Micro. And, now CMA just a couple of months ago announced their acquisition of Phoenix Marine Services out in Los Angeles, giving them now their own port terminal to operate, infinitely, opening up capacity for them to dedicate to their customer base. So I think what you're going to see is the customer's expectation has been clearly defined to those who are listening, which is, give me one throat to choke. I want one call to make. I want this product from door to door as quickly and efficiently as possible. You and I talk about this a lot, that the customer doesn't want to have to go track. The tracking should happen in the background. And really, it should trigger information exchanges in the form of alerts that are going to share with all stakeholders when something has changed. Because no matter what technology we put into it, no matter how much money is behind it, when you and I order something, we want to know about when is it going to get on its way? When should I expect it by? And if anything changes, how quickly can you let me know so I can kind of then come up with a new plan? And so I think, with all of that in mind, the physical movement of goods that's like the foundation of logistics and supply chain is really giving way to the movement of not only the currency, but then also the information and the data. And so if those three things aren't really harmoniously intertwined, that's friction. And that's not what any of us want anymore. So
are you saying that the future of supply chain is these larger, almost verticalized services that a large cargo owner can go to company XYZ and have it be like a turnkey Amazon backend for them?
Well, I mean, I think that's exactly what you're seeing. So, everybody kind of like defines their sort of idea of like the utopian logistics as like Amazon, right? Well, I talk to people inside of Amazon on a weekly basis, and it is everything but utopia. I mean, it's like just like everywhere else in supply chain and logistics. It's like the house is burning down and you're trying to put on a new garage at the exact same time. So, they do a great job of bringing in resources and like dulling the noise and making sure that their stuff is moving, but they're at a scale where, if they don't execute, bad things happen, right? But then you look at other providers, whether it's American Eagle making investments this year into e-commerce and fulfillment startups, or it's, Wayfair is a company that just does a phenomenal job, because my wife is really the hub of my life and my family's life. And, through the entire supply chain crisis of COVID, we've moved a couple of times, and she's bought a new house that she's redesigning right now. And so, she's helped other family members and friends, sort of solve their problems. And so she is as attuned to supply chain as anybody else, because she's the ultimate consumer and involved in all of these transactions all the time as she's helping and supporting all these projects. And one of the companies that she really admires the most is Wayfair. And she talks about how solid they are all the time, because if she goes to their site and the product is out, she can set an alert and then she'll get notified when that product comes back into stock. She can be diligent about getting back on placing her order. When they give her an ETA, it's always within the window. So when you look at Wayfair and you look at their journey over the last 20 years from really a sort of online, place for people to go buy home goods to now really a marketplace and a fully functioning fulfillment organization, they own Castlegate Logistics. And so they've leaned into supply chain and logistics and really made it a core part of their business and a focus area of who they are. And that's really differentiated them. And any market share that may have given way to some of these direct to consumer brands, in the last 4 or 5 years, has more than been made up with the companies that had the supply chain capabilities and the cash on their balance sheet to weather the storm that's been 2020 and 2021. And as you and I both know, there's really no end in sight to these high prices and inflationary sort of things that are going on. But that's the wonderful thing about free markets is people will figure it out, and they will find ways to differentiate and leverage themselves. And I think we're, for guys like you and I, it's so exciting to see supply chain coming to the front page and coming to Thanksgiving dinner conversation and all of these things that, for many years, people just thought like, hey, Charlie, what are you doing now? Are you driving a truck? Is that what you do? So this is really a neat time to be, sort of in the mix.
Well, speaking of neat time, so we've been kind of chatting about larger organizations, but a lot of your work now is focused on startups. So what are some of the great next advances in supply chain? What are some of the big themes that ZEBOX would be interested in, or the entire market should be interested in?
This is the perfect segue, because this is the time of year where for the last 4 years, I've taken a couple of weeks to digest and think about what's coming up for next year. So stand by. In the coming days, we'll be pushing out my predictions for 2022 and the categories of technology that really should make a difference. And I think you're seeing a lot of potential right now with edge computing. is one area that I'm really excited about, because the deployment of the assets out into the wild and truly seeing the benefits of IoT, we're just now finding capabilities on the hardware side to be able to bring this technology to light. So I've been talking to a number of corporate partners inside of ZEBOX, and also other folks in the ecosystem, and particularly in the VCs around edge computing, the capabilities around vision learning and training machines to look at video and understand what's going on. So seeing companies around working around spaces around operational management capabilities, training the machine to see when somebody's taking an inefficient path in and around a restaurant, even, which is crazy. But if you think about it, like restaurants are little mini fulfillment centers. They're little warehouses in the back that you're distributing, food out to the customers, and routing of those staff members has never been a thought before. That's, maybe any deeper than just observational. So seeing platforms gather information around that, using machine learning to increase safety potential in the cab of a truck, also in warehouses or in port operations, to identify and flag unsafe behaviors before somebody actually gets hurt. Also seeing a lot of package optimization algorithms using cameras and detecting shortage or overpacking, putting too many items into a carton, using the wrong carton, using too much dunnage or not enough dunnage. These are things that historically have always felt like tribal knowledge, or like the art of whatever you're doing. But when you can train a camera to think like a brain, it's really the closest thing to like human intelligence that you're ever going to have. And then to add in, audible alerts around kind of like the wrong behaviors, like we're really going to be able to see operational value, from this technology.
That phrase you chose is interesting, because I hear this a lot. You certainly want someone to be an expert in their topic, their focus. But when I hear people say, there's an art to it, what I really hear is, there's a level of complexity that we have not effectively modeled out yet. And you're saying that's kind of baked into your understanding, but you can't communicate it. But there is a model there.
And spoken like a true engineer.
And this edge computing is an excellent example, because there's been cameras in these spaces for a while, but in some sense, and I also previously had a company that tried to pull analytics out of video. We focus on consumer market research and interviews with different demographics, but there are a lot of challenges to understanding what's happening in the video. And classically, video, you just get dumb data out of it. Then I got to process it somewhere else, usually the cloud, right? But when you can move that processing intelligence to it, so effectively the camera will give you an alert to an inefficient routing, or too little or too much dunnage, et cetera. That's a different game, and latency actually has a much bigger impact on the overall system than I think people realize. But edge computing, a little bit today, probably a lot more value and promise tomorrow. One of the trends we've been seeing in companies, because there's been such kind of a pinch of pressure to deploy something immediately, because pain has been felt so greatly with the supply chain interruptions, et cetera, kind of the amplification of old problems that were existing, but really came to light when things started getting out of whack at scale. And I asked this question because I'm wondering, what do you see companies deploying like today? What is a fix? One of the trends we've seen is this kind of explosion of no-code, low-code solutions. Especially, my company Vision, we focus on providing, high quality access to tracking data for containerized freight. But not every company is ready to use an API, which is how we deliver day one. So we've seen a lot of utilization of things like, Zapier, Airtable, Google Sheets, where you can have a smart college-educated kid with a few years of experience writing up some scripts, and you can get the data you want into something like a Google Sheet immediately. How are you